bit about the Homestead Senior Care Foundation and a program that we're excited to share and hopefully encourage more participation in. We're extremely excited to be able to support this event, especially in its unique format of an online virtual event. We're coming to you from Omaha, Nebraska, which is where the foundation is based. But we are a national network and serve all over the United States through our foundation efforts. So today I'll be sharing a little bit about the foundation with you. You have the slides, correct?
Steve, you do.
Okay, yep. Hold on a sec. Let me, here, hold on. Let me jump over to that slide deck. Sorry, guys, this is, we're just warming up here, okay?
That's okay.
So, all right, I thought I had everything on the right screen and
Steve, I have it up if you want me to share screen.
yeah, you know what, Travis, just well, that would be awesome if you could help me out.
Perfect.
Great.
All right. So today I'd like to share a couple quick notes with you about a program that the Homestead Senior Care Foundation runs called Give 65. This program just celebrated its 5th year here in the United States. Additionally, I'd like to share a little bit of information for you just about the foundation and how we operate. So on the next slide, you'll see a little bit of information about the foundation. The foundation was started in 2003 by Paul and Lori Hogan, who founded Homestead Senior Care. If you are not familiar with Homestead Senior Care, their mission is around providing in-home care to aging adults through an international franchise network. So this really comes down to that caregiver relationship, meeting seniors in their home, wherever home may be, to provide that in-home care. The corporation just celebrated 26 years. Our foundation is a little bit younger, coming in at 17 years. And this was really created to serve seniors in need who would likely not be clients of Homestead Senior Care. So Paul and Lori recognized that there was this group of seniors, in addition to those being served by the services of Homestead, that needed those partnerships to be able to age independently and with the dignity and respect that they deserve. And so the foundation was born out of that idea. And this really connects back to the idea that Homestead believes that while not everyone can be a client just for sheer capacity, cost, things like that, there is something that Homestead can offer to everyone. Through our community engagement, that's within the foundation. And then additionally, we have some educational resources I wanted to be able to pass along to the participants of today's conference. 2 websites there on the screen that we like to make sure are offered to those that may be interested. Help for Alzheimer's Families and Caregiver Stress. These are 2 websites that are just offered. They're a wealth of information that may be helpful to you if you're working with clients with Alzheimer's or finding yourself in that caregiver role. We offer those because really it's about an all boats rise situation for seniors and how we can all work in collaboration with one another. The next slide, you'll see that our model is a little bit different than sort of the traditional foundation. And that's one reason we're really excited to speak with you today. We used to be that traditional grant making model of the application review and fund distribution. This year, we actually completed our 5-year probationary period to become a public charity. So we're no longer listed as a private foundation. And part of that was around adopting this new model for supporting senior serving nonprofits. And that's really where this Give 65 program was created. Give 65 is an online fundraising platform exclusively devoted to raising funds and creating awareness for those programs and services that give seniors hope. And really what that means in sort of the short form is we've created a platform at give65.org that nonprofits specifically serving seniors can register on, use as a fundraising tool all year long. We have 2 different opportunities where we also offer funds, which I'll share with you in a moment. And then collectively, what we're really trying to do is shine that spotlight on those services that are out there for seniors. You know, in these traditional giving platforms, you may be familiar with through things like Gives Days in your cities. Any nonprofit in that area can apply. And what we've really tried to do at the Home Instead Foundation is zero in on an opportunity to shine the spotlight on just senior serving causes. We know that there's a massive disparity in the amount of funds that go to senior causes in relation to other causes in the world, like education, animals, youth, things like that. And so really we want to make sure that we're offering a platform that people can get involved in to help support seniors. On the next slide, it's a little bit more about Give 65. So the platform, like I mentioned, is live year round. If you are interested to apply, really what that looks like is submitting to the foundation through give65.org about a 20-minute application. And we've really tried to make sure we don't make this cumbersome because we know that your time is valuable and you're looking for new funding and outreach streams. And so to be able to offer something like this, we really want to make sure is accessible to you. So the information that we ask for is listed there. And then twice a year, we offer 2 opportunities where we ourselves as a foundation raise money and distribute funds. So in July, we have a 65-hour online giving event. It's really about rallying your communities to be able to support your cause. And we offer matching and incentive funds as part of that. So this year we had $135,000 in matching funds. Organizations are allowed up to $5,000 while funds are available. So we timestamp every donation as it's coming in to make sure that we're matching correctly. Also offer financial incentives for things like most donors in a specific category by budget, most dollars raised. And so it's really about this idea of the power of collective giving and how anyone can be a philanthropist because of the fact that we're really about combining these funds from your community to be able to distribute those in a way that allows you to improve and increase the services that you're offering. Giving Tuesday is the other opportunity during the year that we offer funds. This year, we've actually offered, we've jumped that to $65,000. So if you're interested in learning more, we would definitely encourage you to reach out about the application, how you can utilize the toolkit that we've put together to be able to promote the Give 65 program in your community. The next slide, I wanted to show you just a quick example of a profile that comes to you from a friend that you all know, the Arlington Neighborhood Village. And really what we ask in that profile that you create is about who you are, links to your web channels, and ways that people may be able to volunteer. So this is really your chance to talk about who you are. On the next slide, I wanted to welcome Wendy to say a few words. They have been an absolutely wonderful partner of ours the last few years. And wanted to, Wendy was great to have our ask of sharing a little bit about her experience. So Wendy, could you offer a few words about your experience with Give 65?
Sure, thanks so much. I can't say enough good things about the Home Instead Senior Care Foundation and the Give 65 program. For the past 2 years, Arlington Neighborhood Village has participated during the summer. And in each of those 2 years, we've been able to achieve our matching grant of $5,000. So you can imagine for a small community-based nonprofit like ourselves, knowing that not only are we raising donations of $5,000, but that those are also being matched by the foundation has been incredibly important to us in terms of our overall budget. As you know, was said, the application is incredibly simple. It's one of the few times in 24 hours we learned that we had been approved. So I can't say enough about that. But then also the materials that the foundation provides to make the campaign run smoothly is incredibly useful. I note that I'm available to answer any questions or talk to people during the course of this conference or even after the conference. You can get in touch with me and I'm happy one-on-one to tell you how we use the campaign and how it works for Arlington Neighborhood Village. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Wendy, and thank you to your village for participation. We really see this as a wonderful opportunity to engage more villages in this program model. We know that what you do is very locally based, and that's exactly what we do. We want to get that money back out into your community. So thank you, Wendy, for your thoughts and for your continued participation. The final slide is really, I wanted to introduce you to the two other members of our team. Ashley McGrain and Kathy Miskey are here to be of service. The three of us work hand in hand objectives of the foundation. Their emails are listed there. Our information for reaching out is on the Give 65 website or our Home Instead Foundation website. Please connect with us if you have questions, would just like to learn more just to see if it's the right fit for you. Giving Tuesday is a wonderful chance coming up to test it out and sort of test the waters and see if this will work for you and your community. But we really value the opportunity to connect with all of you today and to share a little bit about Give 65 and the partnerships that we hope to grow in assisting you with your fundraising and outreach efforts. We also want to wish you a wonderful conference and a safe and happy holiday season coming up. Thank you.
Great.
Oh, thank you. That was awesome. And I know that Lenley shared the links to her email. We had a couple of questions in the chat room, which you can direct to Lenley directly, please. And we will send that out as far as a link going forward. And Lenley, if you don't mind putting your email into the chat room, that'd be helpful for some of our
Absolutely.
folks. One was one that I couldn't answer, one I could answer. One was, I don't know if you're in Switzerland or in Europe. So you can answer those questions. I know you have some in Canada. So, but moving right along, thank you, Wendy and Lenley. Great opportunity. I guess it's my turn. So I would like to welcome everyone. Good morning, villages, friends, and sponsors. It is with great pleasure and an honor to welcome everyone to the National Village Gathering. I am so pleased to welcome Steve Gurney, publisher and the CEO of the Pro Aging Sourcebook, who will be our MC over the course of the next 3 weeks. So thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Barbara. And I think MC is too big of a title for me. I'm going to be I'll be the voice from behind the curtain. So
he's going to be our Wizard of Oz. He's going to be
that's
pulling
even
the curtain
better.
back and forth. So thank you. First, I want to thank the planning committee. You know, for almost a year of work towards the annual conference, you know, we started back in November of last year planning our in-person conference in Charlotte, North Carolina. We had a great group of people who, you know, worked in their, you know, a handful of villages, board members, and they've given a lot of sweat equity into turning this event into a live event today, you know, the virtual gathering. I also want to thank the tireless work, and you all will agree, of Travis and Betsy Claggett, who are our staff members who continue to support our network and also our board of directors. Travis, we couldn't do it without you. So thank you very much for all your hard work. You really are a wizard at everything. What an extraordinary year we've all had and experienced. Village to Village Network started this year with in 2020, with a new slate of officers, a fresh look at our movement, and a new synergy on how we as an organization can further the mission and vision for the future and the scale of the village model. Never realizing, of course, the direction that we all would face in light of the modern day pandemic. Every village, including Village to Village Network, reworked, reorganized, and changed how we do business and how our model would succeed in a new norm. Every year, our cornerstone event, the National Village Conference, was well on its way to being the highlight of our year. Proposals, speakers, sponsors, and presentations were all in the final stages, and then COVID emerged, halting a 12-year run for an annual event. That's okay. We now have a new way to meet. It's called Zoom. I realize this is not in person this year, but we're still coming together as a network. We are still sharing best practices, and we still have great opportunities to learn. This year will be just our new virtual world. I'm extremely happy, excited, nervous that we have over 600 participants at our annual gathering. What an opportunity for many of our folks that could not afford to travel in previous years around the nation at our past conferences. The virtual village gathering is giving opportunities and opening the door for more discussions and opportunities to the whole network of villages and their members. And I hope that you take this opportunity and learn and grow and find a new norm as we face the fall and the winter with this pandemic and our villages. I am going to end this with a small request. Village to Village Network relies on the generosity of our village members and donations. There will be several opportunities over the next 3 weeks to donate to our mission and scale of the movement and allow new and developing villages to join at reduced cost. You can always donate on our website by clicking on the donate button. And as of this morning, we already started with 2 of our sponsors kicking off our fundraising drive by donating $300. So we thank you for your support. You're going to see my little thermometer over the next couple of weeks. And we hope that you enjoy this conference. Thank you for your support. And I hope you enjoy the gathering. I know I will. Thank you.
Okay, so let's see. Barbara.
We have Physique coming on.
Okay, I think somebody's sharing their screen.
Who is sharing their screen?
If we can, here, let's see here. Travis, are you sharing the screen?
No, I just.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So now, all right. I'm out from the curtain here because we're just going to get in the rhythm of this. So we've got to bring on, it looks like Seal and Sharon, correct?
Yep, they'll be moderators, and
to
then
be-
Physique.
Okay.
And while you're doing that,
Seal.
I'm going to introduce Physique, if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, I got to find Pazit. She was.
She's there.
If
There she is.
Ah, there she is. Got
She's
her.
there.
Okay, good.
Hi, Physique. Yay!
I was off and then I was on other
Okay.
things.
I was a little
I'm
nervous there. I saw you earlier. Okay.
And you know what? I have to add one more thing to my welcome remarks. I've been saying it for weeks. I really believe in Murphy's Law. Something's going to go wrong. Something's going to happen. But that's okay. We're all in this together. We're going to figure it out. There's 3 of us that are co-hosts. So if one goes down, another one will come on and we'll throw the ball. It's sort of those commercials. Someone goes in and the next person goes out. So bear with us as we get through these technical issues. Okay. So I am going to, at this point, introduce Pazit Aviv, who I'm very proud to say is a Village to Village board member, smarter than smart. Love you very much. Pazit works at Montgomery County Area Agency on Aging as a village coordinator, and Montgomery County is in Maryland. She consults with grassroots community organizations on nonprofit startup and developments and facilitates the growth of all active and developing villages in the county. One of her top priorities is capacity building for aging in place in diverse communities. Prior to this position, Pazit worked at Montgomery County's Housing Authority, where she developed innovative programs for low-income older adults through partnerships and collaborations. Pazit holds a certificate in nonprofit management from GW University and an MSW, degree from Salem State University with a focus on aging, end-of-life care, and 2 undergraduate degrees from the Hebrew University, Jerusalem, 1 in social work and 1 in East Asian Studies and Communication. Pazit, welcome. Thank you for taking on Village 101. It is a cornerstone of our first workshops, always in our in-person conference. So we're going to let you take it away.
Thank you, Barbara, and hi, everybody.
Hey,
I can see.
one second, hate to break in, but I just want to give a reminder. This is our first session, and there's about 100 new people who didn't hear this at the beginning. So real quick, we want this to be interactive. You can type in your questions at any point during the day. So like when Pazit tells you something, even if we're not saying we're taking questions, type it in, we'll get to it. And there's a little button at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. You can also type in a question for me, Barbara, or Travis. As you guys can see, there are lots of messages in chat, so we can't monitor those as well as we can Q&A. And that's my last thing that I'm going to say before I turn it over to Pazit is chat is how you communicate with the other attendees. Now, I apologize for this, but I can't do anything about it. But when you go into chat, you have to manually select the all panelists and attendees drop down. If you just type into chat, it's just going to me, Barbara, and Travis. So if you want to communicate with the entire village, use that drop down menu. Gurney out.
I suspect, Steve, you will have to repeat that notice many times throughout the day and in the next following Tuesdays. Can I share my screen? Is that okay? I'm going to just do it and see if it works.
Absolutely. Yes, you can.
Okay. Do you see my PowerPoint?
Not yet. I think
How about now?
now we're
Yes?
going to see it. Yes, we do.
Yep,
Okay.
it's coming on.
Okay, so much of this presentation was offered last year as a part of the Village 101. I know that there are many people who are currently in the conference who are not a part of a beginning village. And as I was going over these comments, I think that there's still value in reviewing them, even if you've been a part of a village for a long time, for a variety of reasons, which I hope you would appreciate and agree with me, or if not, I hope to have a conversation with you in the following hour. In addition to that, I've added a couple of comments regarding COVID-19 and how that affects things. I think that has completely thrown a wrench into the normal way we have been working on village startup and growth. So looking forward to having this conversation with you as well. I will say one more comment before I begin, which pertains to this presentation. There are many how-to manuals and tools out there. There are many people who will tell you how they did one thing or the other. So the purpose of this coming hour isn't necessarily to give you very concrete, how do you find your members? Because I think that is a whole other hour-long conversation, and we cannot possibly cover all the various components of what starting a village would entail. And in addition to that, the messages I want to give you today are overarching this kind of a meta conversation on starting a village and sustaining it throughout the years. So I hope you appreciate these comments. I look forward to having a conversation. So I call it the down and dirty because I hope these couple of messages I have distilled that helped make a difference in your ability to succeed in starting your village and sustaining it. Okay. So the first one is the communication around your vision matters in the beginning as you recruit your co-leaders, people who are your founding members, other partners, nonprofits around you, when you inform them about who you are and what you want to start. So it's really important to effectively communicate why. Why are you doing this? What is the context for you starting this village? And by telling people, I want to start a village so that we can serve people to age at home is more kind of a how. So let me just say, if I'm saying I'm going to have a village that would service people with volunteer rides, that's to me the how are you accomplishing your vision? But what is it that you're trying to accomplish? What's the big level thinking? And I think it touches at the heart of our societal infrastructure and how we've lost our social connections. And when I offer presentations to people about villages, I spend most of my time essentially telling them the bigger picture story rather than what's a village. Because once you understand the context in which we all exist, a village vision becomes much more easy to comprehend and relate to. And indeed, in most of the presentation, when I talk to people about the loss of our social infrastructure, people nod enthusiastically because we're all feeling it, because this is all our society. So we talk about how suburbia was never really built with true community in mind, just in the way that buildings are designed, the lack of sidewalks, no benches, rarely any kind of public community gathering that has nothing to do with consuming food, for example, just a place to get together. The fact that they're two-income household in most places and that there's nobody there to sustain a social infrastructure because people's life revolve around work and atomic family in the household. And so the investment in larger community infrastructure has essentially gone by the wayside because we haven't ascribed to it the value that it really deserves. The monetizing mindset is not really able to incorporate the concept of social networks. You can't monetize that. Friendships, relationships, you can't make money off of it. And so we rarely account for that. And of course, we're not, because we haven't really integrated that into our thinking, things have disintegrated just in front of our eyes. And the only time we recognize that it's missing is because we need it. And if you are aging at home, your kids are far away in Indiana, and you've worked all your life, all your friends you've made are at work, and those connections are currently lost, you didn't have time to build relationship with your friends and neighbors, you can really end up being isolated and stuck when you retire. And I think that's just a general statement. Many people might say, well, I don't see myself in that statement, but I think enough of the people who we're talking to know exactly what we're talking about here. So when we talk about villages, we talk about communities. And here, this kind of jumped. Okay, we're going to talk about COVID because we can't not talk about COVID. I can tell you from my perspective in Montgomery County and the village that I've been in touch with over the past 7 months, this reality is fundamentally shifting the way we're experiencing ourselves and our society. And I think there are risks and opportunities both embedded into this time, and we need to recognize both of them so that we're not completely fall into the abyss of despair and say, well, that's it, everybody, someone needs to just lock up and turn the lights off and we're gonna abandon ship. But there are, it's important to recognize the issues that we're dealing with, as well as leverage the opportunities that this presents. And needless to say, stats are not favorable for people who get COVID at a later age. It's mostly correlated, as we've had a doctor nicely presenting to us at WAVE a few weeks back. It's correlated more with the illnesses they have rather than the particular numeric age they have, but it is a correlation, of course. The increased isolation is a result of the digital divide. It used to be divide, I call it chasm because it has increased so much. Those of you who are now online have been somewhat able to sustain connections and relationships and engage with the world outside. But for those who have not, for a variety of reasons, people who are not online at all, or very limited access to emails or some other limited internet use, they're very, very isolated. And we've had many conversations in different contexts about how to reach individuals who have been so isolated. Now they're even further cocooning themselves at home without any connections to the outside world. It's a serious concern to us. And of course, if you are so much at home, you are not going to get your healthcare needs, and chronic conditions require constant care. So the collateral damage of COVID as a result of not accessing preventative care and ongoing healthcare is significant. And I don't know if people are collecting enough data about that. Anecdotally, I think it's pretty devastating. Locally, we've seen a lot of reduced access to food and have worked very hard on keeping people connected to food resources, delivering meals even to those individuals we thought were not necessarily in need of a cooked meal, but just as a way of connecting with people, nurturing people, and make sure that their anxieties around going to the grocery store is alleviated. And of course, as a result of that, a lot of increased depression and anxiety. I just saw yesterday on NPR, Americans who already were pretty happy and loose with their alcohol consumption is now seeing a 14% increase in alcohol consumption as a result of COVID. And that's not something to brush aside. But we have opportunities. We've seen a lot of community organization, people coming together, recognizing that there's a needy neighbor around the corner that they could support. And I've seen, especially in Montgomery County, people just organizing grassroots communities, organizations, on nonprofit or not, just getting together to provide essential needs, to reach out to individuals who might be isolated. And it's extremely heartwarming that people are looking around and saying, hey, there are people around us that can really use our help, and what can we do to do that? And so I think it's up to us as villages to position ourselves in a place there we can define to our neighbors to say, if you're looking to get involved in this very difficult time in our communities, we can be your avenue. We are those local little organizations that can help you find individuals in need. So it's important to just try to harness that goodwill that has been generated over the past 7 months. I've seen locally a lot of villages have had members who, I mean, to be honest, stop calling the village, and because all their neighbors all of a sudden are helping them. And so I think it's lovely. It means that neighbors are very engaged and involved. It's just important to remind people about best practices and the value of doing things as a part of an organized community, not necessarily as a just one-on-one. I mean, I can say you shouldn't do that. I think that it's important that we encourage people to do things in an organized way for it to be sustained, for it to be done responsibly, and to get the support you need when you do that. Increased interest in technology. I'm seeing a lot of chats. Steve and Barbara, stop me if you want, if you think there's things that we need to introduce in the middle of this presentation. As Steve said, I'd like this to be interactive. We have seen an interest in technology competence among those who are already online. So talking about the chasm again, those who were online have completely transformed the use of technology. We've been providing various levels of technical assistance via phone, so remote technical help, and that has made life so much better for people. Now they are comfortable with using the different kind of video conferences such as Zoom and the like, managing their finances, grocery shopping, connecting with family members. So those who were kind of not so keen on technology are now recognizing that it's a key factor in their life, and they've boosted their capacities. And as a result, in a lot of villages that I talked to report that people who had never participated in social activities, now that everything is on Zoom, we've kind of leveled out the playing field between the people who are homebound and those who are not, because everybody are essentially kind of homebound, and a meeting takes place in Zoom. It doesn't matter if you can get there or not. If you're a caregiver or not, you can simply hop on the platform and participate in an equal way. So people are seeing increase in participation when they offer Zoom events. So these are the things that we can celebrate and silver lining it. I'm just inventing a verb here, but I'm going to move on. So going back to how we position ourselves in the grand scheme of our social environments, it's important that we tell people that we are looking at a time where most people, especially in the COVID era, because we've seen what happens in nursing facilities of all kinds and not just nursing home, but assisted living facilities, that is more of a place of vulnerability for an outbreak. And even if you are in a place where there is no outbreak, you are essentially isolated from the outside world to prevent outbreaks. And so people are recognizing that there are, of course, if you have to, then you do need that level of support. But many people have postponed their decision to move to a different level of care and chose to stay at home for the reasons of safety and autonomy. And I think we're also seeing this, the COVID-19 has exposed how unprepared we are for the aging at home desire people have. We just don't have the infrastructure out there. And what do we do about that? So I think villages can position themselves philosophically as promoting autonomy and self-determination in people's desire to stay at home while remaining connected to the community. And those two ends of this discussion are really important. So continuing on the message lines, it's really interesting how we need to call ageism from the very beginning. And when you look at media and coverage of older adults, as I'm sure you've appreciated, you don't need me to say, it's highly focused on the vulnerabilities, all those frail older adults just languishing at home, waiting for someone to rescue them. Things are so bad and sucky and somebody has to do something about that. But it's really important to alert the fact that aging is not a crisis. Aging is an opportunity. It's the concept of productive, positive aging presents aging as a solution to our societal maladies rather than the problem, as an asset to be leveraged rather than a burden to carry, and as a resource to our communities rather than a drain on resources. And older adults are a group that can make social, economic, cultural, and spiritual contribution rather than simply just be an expanded portion of the population. And it's up to us as villages to carry that message forward and change the way people perceive aging and aging individuals. And that's a big task, undertaking, because we're bucking a very deep trend in our society. But somebody's got to do this, so you better. I want to say one more thing about message, and that will be in my little reading and to-do list. Village Movement California have spent a lot of time and energy and thought in creating a marketing branding toolkit of the village that have used it, love it. And so I recommend that you check in with Charlotte Dixon at some point to see if you can get your hands on that nifty toolkit. It does require that you pay membership, I believe, but I will let Charlotte answer your questions about that. I think that giving deep thought about messaging and communication from the very beginning, and as well as training new members on your messages, is really important so that you have a cohesive and consistent way of approaching it in the community. So the second message is about the meta process. So I'm not going to tell you how to find people specifically, but what are the important things when you do look for individuals to join your endeavors, and what's the best way to organize yourself as a group to increase the chances of succeeding in starting a village. The first thing to do really is to not assume you know your community or the people in it, to assume that your experience in your community is yours alone. You know, the way they talk in certain workshops I'm a part, make I statements. This is my experience of my community, not necessarily extend that to other people, and to get to know who else lives in your neighborhood / community. Is it from large data sets like the American Fact Finder, which is the US Census tool, or local county, city information? How many people are below the poverty line? Are you rural or suburban? What's the area median income? How many people live alone? How many people are African American, Asian, Latinos? How many are renters, homeowners? All this information doesn't give you a true picture of what the community is like, but provides the background, so the broad brushstrokes to give you context to your work. And local authorities of either parks and planning or local municipalities are often able to provide information to this. So find your local data people so you won't have to do all the work yourself. They are more likely than not to have the information you need.
Hey,
Yep.
Pazit?
I'm listening.
Oh, okay. We got a question that came in. I figure this is a good time to address it from Elise Linehan. Will you clarify the marketing toolkit you just mentioned?
Yeah, so Village Move in California had a contract with a consultant that helped them develop a document, and they call it the toolkit. And the document outlines the various strategies you might want to choose when you use a communication strategy for your village, whether it is in the startup phase or afterwards. So it provides some kind of perspective on the kind of language you should be using, the kind of messages that are more likely to be effective, and how to phrase things in the way that you're more effective in your outreach. Does that help?
Pazit?
Mhm.
It's Seal. Can you go back over Charlotte Dixon and explain her role? Someone in the chat room is asking, you mentioned Charlotte Dixon and Village Movement California. Just briefly explain who they are. Thank you.
The Village Movement California is a nonprofit, recently incorporated. Actually, was under, I believe, the village in San Francisco. And so
Yes.
they now,
San Francisco Village.
yeah. And so right now they're their own nonprofit whose goal it is to support villages in the state of California through technical assistance and other means. And one of the first things they recognize is that villages are all scrambling to develop their own communication materials and not really sure about how to communicate effectively what it's all about. I can tell you locally, the experience has been that whatever flyer you create, some people will look at it and just have no sense of what it is you're talking about. It's not an easy concept to convey. And so they spend the time and energy in contracting with a communication expert to help them develop basic tools that people can use. Anyone can be a member of the Village Movement California, although it has California in the name, they welcome everybody. And once you become a member, then you might be able to, actually you could access this branding toolkit. It's kind of a basic help in developing your own communication strategies. Does that help you, you think?
Yes, thank you.
Charlotte Dixon is the executive director of Village Movement California. You can find them.
I'm sorry.
She's on French, you can find her.
I just put the website, and anybody who wants to share, just as a sidebar, Pazit, anybody who wants to share a resource, remember that you have to do the HTTPS in the link in order for it to be shared. But I just shared Village Movement California's website, and you can contact Charlotte through that.
Yeah, and the links that there, I'm going to have another slide with live links so that once we show this PowerPoint, people can just go use that to find the resources I was mentioning here. For example, the American Fact Finder is the live link, and the asset mapping pool, but we're not going to do it right now. Okay. Oh, I am going to talk about asset mapping. So for those of you who are interested in kind of the greater context for villages, I think that the best discipline we fall under is community development. It's a concept that had been around since the 60s. And they use a tool called asset mapping. I'm going to just click, and I'm wondering if I click on it, what's going to happen. Let's just be adventurous. Now you're probably not seeing these documents, so I'm going to have to unshare, right? Because it only shows.
No, it should show your screen.
I'm going to share now the thing that opened. It's called asset mapping.
Okay.
So this is a Wikipedia. It's the easiest place. And asset-based community development assumes that there's all these things. It's a sort of a look at the positive or the bright side of what's going on in your community and building what is already there to build something that is better. It's called asset-based community development. And there's a really cool map Do you see this little chart that outlines local institutions, citizens association, and individuals? Because it gives you a roadmap to who can you reach out to when you get to know your community and when you find your partners. So friends can be found in all kinds of places, and they are listed here. I don't think this is a complete list, but it gives you a sense of where to look for when you think about your community and how you outline what's already there, such as civic organizations, cultural groups, libraries, recreations, parks, hospitals, schools, universities, businesses, house of worship. And I recommend that you check this out because it can give you a sense of structure and context when you start on your outreach effort, and then when you build your partnerships. I think I successfully shared that screen. I'm going back to my slide. Yep, we're back with the slides, right? Are you with me? Slides?
Yep,
Yes.
you're good.
Okay. All right, so that is the kind of neighborhood. And then when you look for people, you have to recognize that there's always a tension between, let's say you're the person that started your village. You have a vision in your head, you want to accomplish it in a certain way, but you're just one person. And even if you're two people cannot start a village. A village launch is essentially a village effort. You need a village to create a village. You have to have people with you, not just because it's a lot of effort and work, but because you need as many perspectives and voices as possible to increase the chances of this village being suitable for your community. So you have to take into account that your experience and your perspectives is yours alone, and that through a democratic process of building consensus, of finding different perspective and synthesizing it into one cohesive vision for your community, are you able to build a village? And it takes some time. The people that tend to want to start a village are very focused and very passionate, and it's hard sometimes to compromise, to say, well, that's what I want because I have this idea, and this is how it's going to be. But then if you bring people who say, well, I don't think so, that can cause some conflict. And what do you do with that is really important. And how do you integrate people's perspectives so that you don't just shut out voices that might be a dissenting voice? And I think I'm going to just make a comment. We're in an age where democracy is not necessarily exercised effectively. And villages are a great way to rebuild those grassroots democratic processes. A way to find people is through all kinds of means. And there had been some forums through V2V or other organizations that gave people ideas on outreach. But I think there's many ways to spread the word, and you need to diversify your method of finding people, because you never know what channels of communications people are attuned to. They could be through word of mouth, and that has been indeed the most effective way of finding like-minded people who want to start a village. But you can also send messages through local listservs or Nextdoor or local print, whether it is electronic or not. And there's all kinds of small meetings you can just invite yourself to and participate in presentation and discussions. And I gave some examples here on my to-do list. You can all have access to this PowerPoint when we're done. I highly recommend people join the Village to Village Network if you haven't so far, not just because it has great resources and tools. It has a forum that you can ask questions. If you're a village in a place that doesn't have a lot of villages around you, you can always reach out to your fellow village members from across the country. And Carol Paquette is on our board, and she's leading the mentorship program. And that's been extremely helpful to most villages that have accessed it, to have another village that is somewhat similar in its composition or its vision, to ask them questions. So how did you do this? What do you think about that? And when you're really frustrated, have somebody you can talk to as a mentor. So I highly recommend either becoming a mentor to other villages if you feel like you're in a position to do that, because we all need each other, or to reach out to Carol and find a mentor village for you. So this is a bunch of links. The toolkit for Village to Village is with membership. Wave and Montgomery County created the village guide. It's on the website that I keep on Montgomery County website. DC office paid Candace Baldwin to do a Start a Village in DC, and Village Movement California, as I mentioned, has this toolkit. These four, some of them with fees, some without, are all incredibly valuable in outlining in written form that is not too cumbersome to read the steps you should be taking as you start your village. So there's no way we can cover all these steps right now, but just know that there's a lot of really, really good written material out there. Sometimes the problem is there's too much, and how do you sort that out? But I think I've distilled the four important publications that I think are most important.
HISC, can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
So there was a question from Chris Palmer. First one was, can you give examples of what villages can do to combat ageism? And then another comment on utilizing sociocracy, C-O-C-I-O-C-R-A-C-Y, sociocracy. I don't know what that is.
And if the person that had written that you might
Patty
wanna-
Brinkman, if you want to answer live.
Okay, so first I will
ask-
respond to the question
Okay.
about ageism. Well, you know, it's like all isms, things don't happen overnight. Prejudices and biases that have been there for many, many years take a long time to untangle. What I've seen locally as being the most effective, two strategies have been really effective. One is get involved with issues that are outside aging. That also gets your membership more engaged. I've seen locally people involved with environmental issues, with some local neighborhood concerns, with doing things for socially vulnerable individuals. So get out of your little bubble of taking care of villages, taking care of village members only, but give the members as well as people in the community a taste of what it's like to be a part of a community and become bigger than, do more than for your village. And I think that is remarkably important. And the second one is engage extensively and meaningfully in intergenerational activities. And there are many examples for that. That is more of a reciprocal relationship building around storytelling, around project collaboratively to help food access or cooking food together, mentorship around professional development or tech support. And these sort of slow relationship building steps, I think, are the most meaningful in combating ageism. I hope I answered that question. You want
Yeah, that's good.
Let's go back to the other question about this term that I haven't figured out yet what it is.
Hey, well, Steve just put something in the chat, but Steve, can you pull Patty Brinkman in to answer this, or can I?
Chat isn't open.
Let's see. Let me.
Chat.
Yeah, I'll bring her up.
Okay.
Okay, Patty, I am going to allow you to talk to
Okay.
if you unmute yourself. Patty, you should be able to, whoops, sorry.
So sort of basically, so I'm reading now the definition. It's about consensus building. Yeah, I think it's really an important aspect of building a village. I will say that in some of we'll talk about group dynamics in a minute. I think it's really important. There are times I've seen planning groups simply unable to build consensus, and it's not easy. We're talking about a very messy human process, and people bring themselves to it. It's not a rational, just, you know, side gig. People bring all of themselves to a process. And sometimes it's not simple in way of, oh, we're just going to talk until we reach a conclusion. And I have seen places where majority voting was the only way to move forward because people were paralyzed. So while I think this is a great place to begin, I fully endorse that. Sometimes you get stuck, and so you need to know how to move beyond it. Other question? Reframing aging. Yeah, someone is mentioning that. That's a really wonderful tool for combating aging, just in terms of the languages the kind of vocabulary you should be using when you talk about aging individuals. And pretty much most of what I've talked about, the reframing what aging is as a solution rather than a burden, comes from that kind of mindset of reframing the conversation about aging. Exposing ageism. Somebody's recommending a book. Yep, it's been circling a lot. This Chair Rocks. Great read.
So
Okay.
here's a great question from Debbie De Palma. How can villages design themselves to be attractive to people from diverse backgrounds, age, race, socioeconomic situation, etc.?
Yeah, that I think is a great question, and one for a whole maybe week of discussion. I will give kind of highlights, and I think that there is a session about diversity with Eddie Rivas coming up, so I recommend that that's where we expand this conversation. But overall, I think that when you start a village, or even if your village is in existence already, the question isn't about let's make something good and then ask people to join us and then be frustrated. How come you're not joining us? Because we have something so wonderful going on. But in the very development of a concept, in the very leadership and planning, you need to have everybody around the table. Not just because it's tokenism, but because people have different perspectives and their view on how things are likely going to succeed. I will give you one example. It's very small, but it's funny. So I don't know if I said that, I helped start the village of Tacoma Park. I was a founding member and was on their board for 6 years, and was also a part of their programming group, which was very diverse. The village of Tacoma Park had been, from the very beginning, focused on diversity, and it took a long time for things to take off. So we said, okay, let's start an event. And one member of the planning committee said, oh, let's just have a wine and cheese social and invite people. And one of the Black members just snorted laughing, saying like, this is such a white event. Because in her mind, this is very culturally not in tune with how she would view her community members to want to join. And we all laughed about it and said, oh my God, we really are not very sensitive about the kind of things we choose to do. And it was really good that she felt comfortable enough to say, you guys are so off. Here's how we recalibrate and do things that make more sense to people. And that's why I think it's really important to have people at the very beginning, at the planning stages, as well as at leadership roles, because otherwise you're not creating something that would be meaningful. And people need to see themselves in the organization to feel like they might want to join it. And even that we have to, I mean, we're in an age of reckoning with a lot of racism, and the level of mistrust people have of other communities and other people is very deep. And you have to recognize that these are things that you might not be able to change, but work with and create under the auspices of the village affinity group, so that people feel like they're with people that they're comfortable with. But I'm going to stop there because it's a very deep conversation and one that can be taken another time.
Hey, Pazit, I just wanted to.
Barbara, do you want to say anything? Steve? Yeah.
Pazit, yeah, I just wanted to share on this topic and all these topics that we're talking about. If your individual village has had some success to some of the challenges that we're bringing up, it's great to share those in chat. And I know many of you are doing. And I also wanted to let everybody know, we will download a full transcript of chat. So after this event, you'll be able to go through and see the various notes and contacts and things that have been shared at our various sessions.
Thank you, Steve. This slide I'm going to talk about, I don't know how much time I have. You got to tell me maybe 10 minutes. This slide is really important. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. You have about 15 minutes, unless you want to keep some
No,
for
I'm
Q&A
fine.
and then bring the panel. I don't know when you want to bring the panel over too, so you let me know.
Okay.
Okay.
I have worked with about 20 different planning groups. Some of them were able to move to a launch of a village and have a viable village, actually most, and some did not. And I just want to share a few observations about what makes for a successful planning group from a human standpoint. And these things are universally true. It's kind of funny to say. When you start a village, it's really important to pay attention to the group dynamics that is taking place with your group and not be solely focused on accomplishing tasks. There are some people in a group that are very task oriented and very time conscious, and they're in my mind what I call them the structured people. They need to have a set of goals with deadlines associated with them, and everything needs to be accomplished in a rational linear process that leads to the end result of starting a village. And these kind of individuals get very frustrated with people who are more of a reflective, let's think about things, let's consider all the implications, that people are more cautious or more, I guess reflective is the most important part of that kind of personality. And when you have two different types of people in a group and there's disagreement about the very process you're doing, that can cause tremendous personal conflicts. And that can often end up really being the source of the failure of the group, because if you can't reach agreement, people get very angry, they develop antagonism, and it becomes very personal, and things get ugly. And I'm being real here, things can get really complicated. Even in active boards right now, people who are currently in a village and there's one or two very dominant individuals who want things a certain way and other people disagree, but nobody wants to get into too much, then you can get a lot of really difficult interpersonal relationships. It's so important to address that head on and find ways to work collaboratively. But I'm going back to my slide. When you start a village, when you launch a village, remember that it takes a lot of time, that things are not going to get done overnight. Things that might seem simple to one person, like what's the problem? I just launch a nonprofit and say we have volunteers, is not that simple, because you need to find out more about your community, to build recognition for the need, to find your supporters, to establish something that would make sense to people. Just know that it's important to stay patient. And villages report it takes them 2 to 4 years to start a village, and not just because it's a lot of actually busy work. I think most of the issues revolve around identifying leaders that want to stick with the process, people who are able to spend the time and are connected enough to bring additional individuals to create a widespread consensus about this village. So just know that this is just the way it is, and stay patient. The work group that you have must have a structure that is all agreed upon. Where are you meeting? When are you meeting? How frequently? Who is meeting and what's the purpose? And be very intentional about those things. So don't let them sort of freewheeling, because some people who do need some structure will be frustrated by lack of progress. So you do need to have, although I've said to start with patience, I think keeping a sense of moving forward is important for people's continued commitment to the process. So they say, okay, I'm not wasting my time here ruminating. We are actually accomplishing small milestones, but still we're moving toward the launch of a village. And it's important to establish committees. And committees are important for active villages as well as villages that are launching and are just with a handful of people. And I will repeat and say it because I've seen villages that have launched and are successful, but have done work, they call it committee of a whole, and all the business of all the village life, including financing, event planning, volunteer recruiting, board nomination, partnership discussion, financial discussions, all get done in the context of a board. So all the board members function and all these provide advice and input and do the work for all these committees. This is not an effective way to run an organization, because A, board meetings just get really long and it wears you down. And B, that's not how you create sustainability. You need as many people involved in the village leadership from the very beginning so that you have a robust capacity to move on. And that the board meetings shouldn't, the planning or the board meeting shouldn't be about rehashing, is the event okay to do in October or November? not all board members or planning group need to have an input about when is the best time to have an event. You need to be able to be effective in how you make decisions so that you can move forward. And you need to give people in the various committees the autonomy and respect that they can use their judgment and make decisions, and then they report to the board. I'm happy to answer questions because that often raises some observations. So let me know, Steve or Barbara.
See, it's Seal.
Yep.
I'm proud to say one of my colleagues posted a comment in chat saying that everyone approaches things from one of 4 orientations: creating structures, getting things done, working with people, or learning and growing. And she talks about the importance of having an open process to understand everyone's orientation. That really gets to the heart of understanding where you're coming from and understanding where your weaknesses may be, personality wise, dynamic wise. When you're, it's difficult. It's a complex process.
Right. Yeah, it's exactly right. And I think the most important thing we can emphasize right now is that know that it's there. However your group chooses to address it and figure it out is really up to you. But you got to be mindful that it's always there, that elephant of the interpersonal and the personalities that you bring in. And as a result, I mean, I didn't say that before, I think it's really important. When you bring individuals to your leadership, don't necessarily find people who agree with you, but find people you think would be team players. People who are able to engage in a conversation, not always have their way, but are able to then express their opinion. Because you don't want people who say it's either my way or the highway, because that's just a deal breaker. There's no conversation. And you don't want people who are just simply there along with the conversation, even though they have, I mean, I've seen a lot of times where I always say that in outreach, there's always a bunch of people in the back who have this skeptical look on their faces. And you can see that like, this is never going to work. You know, those people, never going to work. But I want to hear you out. Why don't you think it's not going to work? So that is important perspective that you have that we might not have. And maybe your input can really improve our process or our idea. So it's kind of a nice balance to have, to build a group that is A, not falling into groupthink, and B, allows for people to express their opinions. No, that's the same thing. I wanted to say that you're able to reach a consensus or a democratic process while allowing people to express their opinions without holding back. That's how I wanted to say it. Give the committee the authority to operate autonomously. I think it's really important. You don't want rogue operations, people just going off, doing their thing without connecting with anybody else. But if you really want to build a sustainable village, you have to groom your leaders. You need a lot of leaders, people who are owning this village. And for somebody to feel like they own something, they need to know that their opinion matters, that they have a responsibility, and that they're held accountable. So giving people the discretion to make choices is really important. And of course, have communication lines operating. I wrote here specifically, this was at a time where some pretty bad leadership dynamics happened because people were arguing over email. Can I just say, please don't make decisions over email. Please don't hash out sticky subject in email. It is a very bad communication channel for interpersonal relationships. If you feel like as a group, you're stuck in a point, you say, ooh, this calls for a discussion in a meeting. Either if it's urgent, call an ad hoc meeting. If not, put a halt on it and say, okay, you know what, we're going to talk in the next time we get together. Because emails, the way you read it doesn't mean it's the way it is intended this way. People hear slights, people get really defensive. You know the drill. I'm not telling you any new things. Just avoid work by email. And the last point about a process, which can't be overstated, is the importance of having fun and finding joy in the process. If you feel like it's work, people are not going to stick to it with a process. Find the time to get all the village leaders or the planning group members, just go happy hour and not talk shop at all. Just have fun. Find ways to just enjoy yourself, to have a laugh. There's a group I work with here locally, and they always have a checking time. That's a part of their meeting. So they don't just start, okay, the meeting is in session. item number one on the agenda, but they just have they give the time intentionally for people to check in, whether tell us something that really made you happy this week, something you're looking forward to, or some other news you want to share, so that people build that rapport. And it's really important that people enjoy each other's company, because it will make them more effective as they make decisions. Yes, super important. People, what kind of people you want? I'm not going to read all of it. It's here, but really, I think attached a lot of those points. It's pretty obvious by now that you don't want people who are megalomaniacs, people who are rigid. You don't want them. You want people who are community minded, but are able to get things done. People who are ready to compromise, but are willing to also express their opinions. People who are able to appreciate other people's diversity and not find ways to offer slight. And people who are just committed to your cause and have the time and energy. I've seen a lot of people bring in important individuals from their community. Somebody who was the executive director of this or the leader of that. And very often these individuals are not likely to roll their sleeves and do the work. So you want people who are understanding of the importance of giving time and sweat equity to the process, not just come provide their advice and go about their business. You don't need advice. You need people who are able to provide the input as well as put in the work. Any questions about that? Comments?
No, we had one comment from Chad F. I don't know whether or not he wants to come on and follow up on a comment he made in the chat room.
I can
Chad,
pull him
Yeah.
on if here,
I
Chad.
asked him if, yeah.
Yeah, I'm giving him Chad, if you want to unmute yourself. Okay. As usual, it takes a while. We catch people by surprise. Oh, there he goes.
No, not really. I don't. I respond better to questions if you want to ask something.
Okay, no problem.
So I'm done with my presentation. I just kind of have one more slide that I feel sometimes helps with the messaging. I'm going back to the messaging. So we're going to have a second part to this workshop with a panel of 3 individuals who have been a part of a starting village at different stages. And the idea for the next part is to have a Q&A where people who have specific questions, either because you want to follow up on things that were said in the PowerPoint, or because you want to have the chance to hear from individuals who have done the work or are doing the work, to have kind of a conversation. The panelists each will have a few minutes to explain who they are, what village they're a part of, and share some points about them and in their village. And then we'll have an opportunity for kind of a open forum discussions with lots of Q&A, hopefully.
Okay, I'm going to bring Sharon Seal and Howard. And then I've got to find Deborah.
Deborah Owens, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
while you do that, I'm just going to finish and say that villages are more about remembering how things used to be in our communities and creating something new. Just to keep in mind that when we're not talking about an innovation, rather just a reintegration of really old and really good ideas.
And if Deborah Owens, if you're in the audience, if you could raise your hand, I'll bring you over, but I don't see, okay, there's, I'm hoping this is Deborah.
And see, while we're waiting, can you put in your contact information in the chat room,
Yes.
please?
It will also be in the PowerPoint. So once we share
Right.
them, people can find it as well. But I'm going to put it here.
So I believe Deborah is under the Melissa Birdsong name, and I could be wrong on this, but it's the person that raised the hand. Just for folks, I put this in chat, but if you're using somebody else's login, Deborah, is that Is that Deborah with Melissa Birdsong on there?
Yes, Steve, I couldn't find the host, the panel sign in.
It's okay. I'll change it so that it says Deborah Owens.
Oh,
real
thank
quick.
you so much.
Yeah, don't worry, guys. These are the fun things about us learning technology. And if this was a live event, I guarantee there would be a dozen more problems that are radically different. Like people didn't get chicken, they got shrimp or something like that for their entree.
Good analogy, Steve. Thanks.
Can you see me now, Steve?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Just consider me to be the least technological savvy person in your village.
I think we're going to have a contest on that before the conference, and we're going to give away a great prize. But the problem is the prize is going to be some technology that the winner won't be able to use.
Oh, Steve, it should be tech support. That would be the prize.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Oops. Everybody is muted. So I guess we can kick off this panel presentation. I'm going to ask everybody to unmute. There we go. Whoops. Say something, Pazit. I just want to make sure your audio is working.
Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, so I guess we should open, you want this to be, well, we're going to go around and everybody's going to make a few statements, but then we can make this an open dialogue. So this is a great opportunity, folks, where if you want to share something, you can raise your hand by clicking on the button at the bottom, or you can continue to type in your questions and comments in Q&A. Okay, so who's going first?
Steve, I'm on the, do you want me to go first?
Absolutely, we don't like dead air.
Okay, I have slides, but of course, Melissa Birdsong did for me because she's our technological genius, but I'm just gonna talk a little bit about how our village got started and where we are in the process, if that's okay. I am with Raleigh Village East, and we are a new village, and we are celebrating because last week we got our 501c3. And so we live in a historic neighborhood in downtown Raleigh that is a very community oriented. We live with each other, we bicker, you should see our listserv. And so the other three members of our officer and the executive committee, Sarah Stoller, Peter Rumsey, and Melissa Birdsong, are on this call also. Peter and Sarah and I have been friends forever. We made friends with Melissa when we had to move an older person with a house that needed to be condemned to a new place. And so we had a hot wash in sort of what aging in place is. And so we moved her as close as we could to the neighborhood. And so we sort of reversed engineered this. We had all of these relationships in this neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods. And so we went about bringing other neighborhoods in, more diverse neighborhoods, neighborhoods that were like ours. And so then we had to put the structure in place. And so we have a board, we have committees, we have a 501c3, thank you. And then, so we were going to launch in March, or at least a soft launch with an idea that we would have a hard launch in January. And then, of course, COVID came along. So we have been reevaluating how in COVID do we move forward? Do we move forward as far as the membership is concerned? Do we, have our priorities changed? And so that is where we are in the process. That's really all I know to say, because we have more questions than answers right now. If there's any help we can be to another village, we will be delighted to. Just know that we are on the beginning of this journey.
Great. Would another panel member like to share? Howard?
Howard is raising his hand.
And Howard.
Okay, my name is Howard Shapiro. I'm the president of the board of directors of Villages of the Berkshires. The Berkshires are in Western Massachusetts, at the opposite end of the state to where the first village in the country developed, Beacon Hill, which was really one of the ways in which I learned about it. I am also one of the co-founders of Villages of the Berkshires. To Pazit's point, it took us a long time to get to where we are. We started with a first organizing committee 4 years ago this past July. We received after having a steering committee that worked on many aspects of villages, we received our 501c3 status as of January 2019. We had expected to launch as of April of 2020. Because of COVID-19, that was delayed till we could be more information about what our state would allow us to do and what we could be doing. Villages of the Berkshires will be a hub and spoke. The Berkshires covers an area of a population that is 132,000 people. 40% of the people are 60 years of age or older, 50 years of age or older, and growing quickly in that regard, as are other communities. By the year 2030, it is expected that 60% of each of the towns, there are 32 towns in the Berkshires, will be 60% of 50 years of age or older. We have not determined that there is an age cutoff for being a member. We welcome younger families, and to Pazit's point about intergenerational aspects, we are looking at that very seriously as part of what we do. Our first village has opened as of August 15th. We have a second village in the southern part of the county that is in the midst of development as well. We were very fortunate early on, after we received our 501c3, that we received a grant from the Tufts Health Plan Foundation that allowed us to hire a part-time program director who is on board with us at this time. We have a virtual office, not a real office, you might say, and we are moving ahead very, very quickly. We currently have already identified approximately 24 members who are participating with us, and we have, in addition, 26 volunteers who are participating with us. We have begun to look at other ways in which to provide our services, what services we can provide in the days of COVID-19. We are moving quickly to see how that will be available to us and what we can do. I will also report that we were very fortunate to be a recipient of this new grant as of August 1st for the National Community Care Corps. We are we will be doing our volunteer development in conjunction with some other organizations. One of the things I would say that has been extremely helpful to us, also pointing out what Pazit discussed about the collaborations that can be important in the community. We made a decision early on because of the work that the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute does in our community, OLLI at BCC, it's called, Berkshire Community College, that we would form a partnership with them, hoping that they would provide some of the educational and social opportunities for our members, and that we would also be able to identify members and volunteers from their group. They are part of that grant as a collaborator with us on that grant, as is the Berkshire Community College, which is also providing us with students who are in the service learning program to work with us, either in an administrative way or as volunteers with us, helping our community. And we're really exploring right now the ways in which we can manage this for the students and for our members in light of COVID-19, because there are so many issues with that. Another comment I'd like to make in relationship to Pazit's comments, as we went through our process and we're building our program before our board and while we still had a steering committee, the concept of consensus building was very important. People had different views about what we should do, how we should do it, what we should charge, if we should charge for membership. And all of those issues were things that needed to be taken up, about which we needed to come to some agreement. But we did not necessarily go with a total consensus. There were many times when it was a majority point of view rather than a whole group. During our process, there were one or two people that we lost as we began to develop. But overall, we have very committed participants working in different aspects, each taking on different functions that needed to be involved in developing villages of the Berkshires. I'll leave it there for now and see what questions there might be.
Hi, this is Sharon Canner. Let me jump in, and I want to make one statement to begin with. If you've seen a village, you've seen a village, and just the variety of what's out there. Reston for a lifetime, and I would do a shout out to Steve Gurney, who was part of the community leaders more than 10 years ago, came together and said, we need to do something about this concept of aging in place. And the county supervisor brought together various forums, hundreds of people literally came together. They studied the models, they studied Beacon Hill Village, and there was a sense that, yes, this would be a great, really great idea for Reston. Reston, as probably know, is one of the original planned. We have over 65,000 people, variety of ages. Reston is neighborhoods are broken into, we call them clusters of homes, a lot of houses, patio homes. So this group that came together more than 10 years ago looked at the models and decided that they wanted to model what Beacon Hill Village did, based on volunteers. And a lot of work and a lot of information was made available to the community. In 2014, I left active paid employment, explored the aging in place, and learned about Reston for a lifetime, figuring out, and at this point had met with Steve and looked at the wonderful work he had done and said, how can I help? And he gladly was very open and said, yes, by all means, figure out how you can help. So began to learn more about it, but by this point, so this is 2014, it was still a volunteer operation. And there was a determination made that there's a lot available through our county. Fairfax County, Virginia is a very active area particularly for older adults. There was a lot offered, and there was a feeling of let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's not duplicate what is already in place. We then struck up a partnership with our homeowners association, which covers the entire Reston. And that worked for a certain point, and then the times changed, and we then hooked up with a group of providers called and WAFA. The providers included home care, new senior living facilities. They hosted breakfasts for us at their facility. This was wonderful pre-COVID, beginning last September, just a year ago, and brought many of the individual members who really are, that there are no paid members to Reston for a Lifetime, but a lot of the older adults across the community came together for speakers to meet over a lovely breakfast that was hosted by one of the senior living communities. Obviously, COVID came along and that went south. At the same time, Reston for a Lifetime, which is certainly a great, love that term because it takes out the aging stigma of that to some extent. We continue to publish a newsletter, and the newsletter is a reflection of what is going on across the community. And we have many community organizations that jump in, Ollie, Arts, and say, this is what's going on, here's this webinar to attend. So if I can just sort of summarize, Reston for a Lifetime has no board, no formal membership. There are no dues. It's a wide open organization with a newsletter. And we've been able to network across the community, and particularly during COVID, obviously, we're all having to change of how we work. And I would say the fact that Reston was not a service provider and did not function as a traditional village, it has created even more of a sense of community. So it's been it's been heartening to get emails from our over 600 plus subscribers to the newsletter to say thank you, and gee, thank you for connecting me. On one hand, I apologize that we don't provide services. We're not a traditional village in that sense, but I do feel that we are making a difference. I want to end with I think a wonderful line from Taziz, is to say, aging is an opportunity, and it really is an opportunity for us to feel like we're giving back. And as helpless, I think, as sometimes we feel about COVID and what's happening around us, I feel that we are making a difference. So I'm really pleased that I'll harken back to Steve and all of those pioneers who helped us get started sometime.
Well, thank you, Sharon. I'm going to jump in, and there's a couple questions in our Q&A. I was going to hit up the panel, Pazit and Howard and Deborah. Howard, you answered it in the chat room, but insurance plays a factor with the hub and spoke models. And I know there are a couple others on this call. Did you just want to address that to everybody about how you navigate the insurance with multiple, areas?
So when we made the decision to be hub and spoke and began to look at insurance opportunities, we were fortunate, thanks to some advice from Village to Village Network, to be able to connect with an insurance company that had been providing support and insurance coverage to other villages. When we sat with them via really the phone and not so much in person, but email, we discussed with them what we were developing, and they encouraged us at that point to look at the idea that anybody who is becoming a member of a village, regardless of what spoke that would be, is that they would be becoming a member of Villages of the Berkshires, and so would all the volunteers, and that the protocols that we develop will be used by all of the villages, both by the volunteers and the members as we develop. And that seemed to satisfy the insurance company's needs, that we were ensuring the coverage of our individuals and making sure that we have protocols in place for them.
That's terrific. Thank you. I'm glad we were able to help you too. That's good. The other one is it's a really actually a great question, I think, and something, wait, I just lost it. So hang on. For villages that have been around a while, what advice can you give to find members, volunteers to succeed, the original leaders and their passion? Most new members seem to want to experience, but not to contribute in that way. That's a great question. Anybody want to jump on that? Because it's something that comes up a lot. It's, you know, the succession of the original, and especially, and it's not necessarily the villages that are 10 plus years old, it's the 5-year mark where the first round of folks are just coming off. And, you know, you're looking for people who are vested in what the original founders did. And how do you go about doing it? So, Seal, I'm going to give that to
I'll try. And I know we're running behind schedule, so I'll be quick.
we're in good shape. We're okay.
If you've been in, if you're part of the original organization of your particular village, it's going to be hard for you to think that anybody is going to take the place of those original people, and you've got to kind of get out of that. They're going to be different. They're coming when the village is in a different phase. Doesn't mean they're any less valuable. They just, you know, they don't need to really, I don't want to say they don't need to be vested. Of course they do, but don't think of them as your next group as replacements. They're just going to be different. Your village is going to be looking at a different phase. You'll look different. It's always going to be a challenge. I think we still have that challenge. You know, when we have board members who've been so great roll off the board and we think, how are we ever going to do it without them? Somehow we do. And people are, will always surprise, people just surprise you in pleasant ways. Here's an example. I remember two board members ago, this was about 4 years ago, we were at a member welcome party, new member welcome party. I had just met a new member for the first time. My board chair's talking with her, and she knew her a little bit already. But this person who just came into the village, you know, my board member's trying to give her a responsibility. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, oh, Barbara, I don't know. Don't scare her away. She took it on, and she's been doing that for 4 years. I wouldn't have had the courage to ask so soon, but Barbara, Barbara just, you don't ask, you don't get. And that person has run our calendar of events, coordinated it for the last 4 years. I just, you know, don't be afraid to ask. I find myself, I have to talk myself into things sometimes. I don't want to do something, I'm a little timid, but if you just get out of that and you stop with your preconceived notions that person could ever replace this person, that person's not the first person, but you have to, I think, trust the process. Otherwise, we still struggle with finding enough volunteers. It's never going to change, I don't think. That's all I got.
I want to add to that just a couple of thoughts in terms of getting people to join. You got to have a little switch flipped in your brain to think that you guys are the cool kids club. And you need to be the one that actually have to turn people away because there's too many people wanting to join your board. I mean, if you want to have a good mindset, that's a good mindset to have. And to be a cool kids club, you need to have a lot of fun. I want to go back to fun. Fun is highly underestimated in our culture. It's not work. It's super cool and super fun to be a part of a village, to take responsibilities for village. If somebody wants to start a chess club, they just probably need to be the one to do it. And you don't need to have like, wait, we need to talk to the program committee and the head of the program committee need to approve. So that's just not fun. See where I'm going with this is if you want to bring more and more people to your village, they need to have a sense of ownership in the very joy of making this happen. It's a mindset switch.
Interesting. Yeah. And I will say, you know, for those that are out there, I say it a lot. We have a lot of people, a lot of boomers who are looking for purpose, and especially if they're still working, maybe, but now everybody's home working, they're looking for more to do. And we see a lot of new opportunities for volunteers. A lot of our villages lost a lot of their older volunteers because of COVID, not because of the disease, but because of the scariness of going out and being interactive with people. And so, but I do hear it's being replaced with a younger, older adult, you know, that are, you know, working, like the realtors. I hear a lot about realtors, you know, pitching in and helping a little bit more. And like I said, some of the folks that are, you know, working from home, but now they need a diversion. They need something else that they can do that's getting them out and stimulated. And why not appeal to that broad base of community, you know, help your neighbor across the street. Just go grocery shopping when you're going grocery shopping, or maybe just say hi, or maybe just taking their trash barrels out. It's, you know, it's an appeal, and I hear it more often than not. So just an opportunity. There are a couple other questions, and I know we have to close this up in about 10 minutes. Janet Simpson asked, any structures where all volunteers have a non-monetary path to membership or are automatically become members? Anybody have, you know, I think there might be even two questions in here. Let's see.
I know a few villages that are non-monetary and yet have staff. They find a pathway into grant writing and contacting and receiving funds from local municipalities to accomplish their goals. It is doable. You can accomplish that. It's just a different mindset. You likely are going to have to, for the purpose of funders, emphasize serving highly vulnerable populations, either very low income or particularly frail, to qualify for some of these funding sources, because that's where most of the monies are, the little that there is. So if you're interested in this kind of work, I can connect you with the village that's doing this kind of funding mechanism.
There was another question. Thanks, Bizzy. There was another question about, are there any villages that are for profit? I don't know that answer. I don't think so. But, you know, I'd say probably 99.9% of the villages are, you know, we have villages that have parent sponsored, you know, that are, you know, like the CCRC might be, you know, a for-profit. You know, we do have a couple of CCRCs that have spun off a village, but that arm is also the nonprofit arm. So I'd venture to say no. So that's your answer, Doris. What is, Mary Yarber asked, what is the average membership of your village and how do you encourage member retention? I don't know who that's directed to. Maybe Seal can answer that, or Sharon, you know, somebody who has a open and operating village.
Okay. The first few years that we were in business, we had a member retention rate of like 98%. Well, we were just thinking we were doing everything right. The reality is, you know, nobody was too terribly frail at that point. Those were the honeymoon years. But as our members aged, some of them moved to Florida, moved wherever their adult children happened to live, maybe, or moved into a senior living community, or needed more care and had a dedicated caregiver and couldn't take advantage of the things that our village could offer. We never drop anyone, but sometimes they just need more than what we can offer. And then it just doesn't make sense for them to continue. And that's always their decision. So then we saw our beautiful retention rate falling. And this is, you know, I compared notes with other villages and it's just a life cycle reality. So the bigger your group gets, I'm sorry to say your retention rate will probably go down. Ours did. It was great when we had 80 people and we gave lots of attention and everybody was younger. Now we're at 220 members and our retention rate is more like 85, maybe 80%. And that's hard, because then you ask yourself, what are we doing wrong? Could we have prevented this? And to be honest, in some cases, perhaps we could have. Perhaps we weren't doing all that we could have done to keep them. I acknowledge that might be the case. If we didn't get them engaged early on, some of them were going to probably go away anyway, and others, just because of their health, were going to go away. So where do you focus? You focus on those that you want to try to prevent as much fall off as you can. We're going to make mistakes because we're really, but we're always going to strive to do better. I don't know what the metric is. I don't know what the magic number is. I just know that as we've grown, that the retention number has dropped. And as our members have gotten older, it has dropped somewhat. We're always paying attention to it. We have, a group of people who call and check in with members to try to keep them engaged. If we haven't heard from them in a while, we'll call back. But I know we're missing. We always miss opportunities. It's just the reality. When you have a very lean staff and never enough volunteers, you just do the best you can. And you have to get comfortable with always wanting to do better, but you might miss some opportunities. And I think we've had to forgive ourselves for when that happens. I was just on the phone with someone yesterday who celebrated her 93rd birthday. I'd been meaning to call her all month. And then I found, I'm like, it's time. We talked for an hour on the phone. It was a great conversation, but I've been meaning to call her for ages. I mean, we miss opportunities. It's just, we've got to forgive ourselves for it. We're all doing the best we can. And I don't know what else to say. It's not perfect. We're a community and we do the best we can.
I like that.
That's a non-answer.
No, it is. And, I ran a village for 10 years, and one of my board members used to call it the churn. And it was always third. A third didn't renew the renewals, and we had about 180, 80 members. And you can't avoid it. It's more care. They move out of the area to be probably closer or to an assisted living, so they're, out, or they pass away. And we had an older village. And so being able to get that retention is hard because the churn is it's a constant wheel, and looking for younger members. So
one of the people involved in our membership retention program early on said it's like trying to keep bunnies in a box. They just hop out and you just keep trying to keep them in, but it's just life happens, It's a silly little way to describe it. But
well, we had a couple of chatters in the chat box in answer to the feast. And if you just look at it, a couple of villages have sliding scales, and I know that a lot of our villages also have endowments or a scholarship type program for those, if you do have a dues paying structure, to allow people to come in, at a reduced or no cost. But if you just go through, we're saving all the chatter, so you don't have to worry about that. Jackie Sullivan also mentioned, where is it? It's a good question for all of us to probably end with this note. Can the panel share the experiences with villages that are starting out as virtual, no office, and what are the one or two most important considerations?
I think that maybe describe us pretty down to a T. We never intended to be a virtual village, but we are, to the extent that we are a village at the moment. We do fine amongst ourselves, but then we also had we have a woman who is an aging in place guru in the neighborhood. We thought, if we do a Zoom, would anybody come? And we had 45 people. And then we're going to do another one on modifying your home. We have a guy that lives in the neighborhood who's a contractor who won a national award for building a accessible house. And so we're going to have one on modifying your home. And so we are, we feel like that we're adapting, and we've had better luck with the virtual things than we ever hoped that we would.
I might comment too, Barbara, on that one. Our intent was always to have a virtual office. And what we have found as one of the most important pieces for us is that our program director is staying in communication with members on a regular basis. Whether that is with Zoom meetings that need to take place or individual calls to members, using volunteers to make contact with our members. But we're not finding the absence of somewhere for someone to go into an office being of any significance or relevance right now. It probably wouldn't happen anyhow in the light of COVID-19, but even without that, I don't think we would make a change in terms of what we're doing. And we have found that people are responsive to our voicemail phone and to each other in terms of communicating with each other, and that it hasn't really hampered our operations at all.
That's great. Thank you. Well, I think we are running out of time. Everybody's going to want to have a little break between now and our next panel discussion, which will be in about 15 minutes. So go grab a bite to eat, because I think the conversation is going to be incredibly lively, and you're not going to want to miss it. AARP will have an inclusion panel. So thank you all very much, the panel, for providing your insights. Kazit, as always, you're the best. We enjoy your conversations and your insightful wisdom. We appreciate it. We will catch you in about 15-20 minutes. And thank you all very much for attending. And by the way, we are recording it. We are capturing all the chat, so it will be posted. And I promise you, please be patient. You're gonna have to put your patience hat on. That would be, Travis will jump off a bridge if everybody starts calling him and asking him for the stuff tomorrow. So I'm going to tell you right